Hello and good morning. How's everybody doing today? This is Rich Harshaw. We're here for our Innovation Hour webinar today, and I want to thank you first and foremost for being flexible on the time. Originally, this was scheduled for Tuesday, and due to some last-minute things that came up, don't like to change things like that very often, and in fact, I don't think we do very often, but something did come up, and I appreciate you being a little bit flexible and getting on with us today. That being said, let's go ahead and start our Innovation Hour. We've got an interesting topic to cover today. Now, I'm going to give you a little heads up. If you want a Cliff Note version of what we're going to cover today, you can check the blog posting from Tuesday because it's the same topic. In fact, I'll share many of the same stories. I'll elaborate quite a bit more on the webinar version. But we're going to talk about Home of the Blank and Pimp My Ride. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, the way that, well, here's what happened. Going back probably about 5 years ago, I've always been interested in innovation. We've tried to make innovation part of the MYM process, but about 5 years ago, I got serious about it and decided I'm going to try to categorize some ideas for innovation. And I did that by going out to the bookshelves, Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com, and looking around and trying to find some good books on innovation so that I could get some ideas. I'd read a bunch of Tom Peters stuff, and he had some really good ideas, but nothing that I found to be particularly, well, I don't even know what the right word is. Sort of like, here, do this specific thing. A lot of the examples in all of the books, not all of them, but a good majority of them were for large companies. They always inevitably give the Southwest Airlines example, low-cost leader, the fun airline, and you know, those things are good, but I couldn't really find anything that was specific to small business and that you could look at and say, okay, here's what I can do. So I started creating my own innovation formulas. I think we're up to now close to 20 innovation formulas, and we're going to cover two of them today. One is called Home of the Blank, and one is called Pimp My Ride. And this is a 2-for-1 because we're going to cover both of them in the same webinar. Now, the article I wrote the other day was Pimp My Ride, and we're going to go through that first. Again, if you read the article on Tuesday, then you'll be really familiar with this content, but I will give you some additional information, hopefully to make it worthwhile to participate in both. Then we'll get into the Home of the Blank because it's a natural extension. It also works well with the whole concept and discussion of identity, pointing at the shower head, and so forth. So with that being said, you know, one thing to keep in mind, well, a couple things to keep in mind as we go through innovation discussion. Number one is you're here to get ideas, not necessarily here's exactly the thing that you take and exactly run with it, because a lot of the examples are not necessarily going to be in your industry. So I like to call them thought spurs. They're supposed to spur your thinking so that you can find ideas of your own. Number two, we've always got to weigh the cost of innovation against the expected increased results in sales and profits, because there's always a cost involved. You can't just simply make something better and ostensibly spend money to do that without having an expected return on that investment. So some of these things we're going to talk about today may take a little bit of extra money, but I'm going to tell you this. This is just food for thought. You do whatever you want with it. I mean, it's your business. You can do whatever you want. I am going to recommend and suggest that whenever possible, to whatever extent possible, you take the position of a premium brand selling premium products at premium prices. Now, we could have a long and drawn-out discussion about the niches that are available and the need for lower cost, lower price, lower margin types of things, and that's okay. It exists out there, and maybe that's you. But I'm going to recommend that you try to innovate your business, take more of a premium approach, spend the money if you have to, and get the return on investment, because here's what I found. It's a lot easier to stand out. In fact, one of the examples we're going to go through today during the Pimp My Ride section is the example from Victoria's Secret. If you remember that from the article the other day, I'll get into that in just a second. But I want to give you a quote from, let's see. Okay, let's see. Who is this guy? Sorry for the delay. I have a book in my hand. Okay, here it is. This was from Wexner. I'm not sure who this is. He's the chief of, well, I don't know who it is. His name is Wexner. Leslie Wexner. Thank you. Leslie Wexner, he was the founder of Victoria's Secret. Or he wasn't the founder, but he bought it and took it and made it into what you know it to be. Here's what he said. I like to be in the want business. The margins are better than in the need business. And, you know, this is interesting. When you start getting into more of a luxury type brand or more of a premium type brand, you start getting into wants. And, you know, it's easy to look at that and say, well, I'm in remodeling and people need remodeling. Yeah, but do they need a $1,200 window, or do they need a $70,000 kitchen? It's like saying people need cell phones. Well, I think we live in a day and an age where it's reasonable to say that to function in business and society, and geez, even in high school, you need to have a cell phone, but do you have to have the top of the line model? And the answer is no, you don't. It's a want. So that's what we're kind of going for here with this whole innovation discussion. So that little introduction, let's get into the first thing. Pimp My Ride. The title comes from a TV show on MTV years ago. And this is just a little photo montage. They take this girl who's got this beat up junker. They bring a team of experts in, and they pimp it out and make it look really cool. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here is pimp my ride, but with your business, okay? So the first story comes from the fajita industry. And like I said, this was also recounted on the blog posting the other day, but I'm telling you, this was quite an amazing scenario. We went into this restaurant that was tucked into this soccer pro shop / golf driving range near the hotel that we were staying at in San Francisco. It was the only place in immediate walking vicinity to get something to eat. And it looked like a taco stand. It was just a horribly, terribly non-attractive looking place, and was having really a lot of second thoughts about eating there. And the guy's name was Jose. I knew it because it said on his name tag. And literally, if he had not, it seemed like he needed to feed his children. And if we left, they were going to starve. So that's the only reason we stayed. It was just not an attractive, it's just not a place you would want to eat food. Maybe to buy some golf balls or something. I don't know. It was a really weird place. Just to be clear, they had the soccer pro shop and the golf pro shop and the driving range, and they had this little taco stand cart thing over. It was indoors, not outdoors, okay? Anyway, so the guy brings us the fajitas. I ordered the fajitas, and I've got pictures here on the screen of fajitas. We've all seen fajitas, right? And they always look like this, different versions. Sometimes they put the stuff on the side, like up here in the upper left-hand corner. Sometimes it's more mixed in, but it's always about the same. Well, here's what came from this guy, Jose. And he handed it to me, and I remember just looking at it, confused, thinking, I don't even know what this is. I ordered a fajita. What is this? And he said, well, it's the fajita. And if you look on here, you'll see it's got some rice on the bottom, and then it's got the meat here and some of the onions and peppers and stuff, and then it's got this sour cream all over the place. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. There is just no good way to sneeze on a webinar. Just doesn't exist. Sorry. So anyway, he made this just amazing looking thing, and if you go online, you can Google his fajita shop. Gosh darn it, I did it the other day and I forgot what it's called, but you'll find all kinds of creations. You can order burritos or anything from this guy, and it comes all tricked out. Sad thing is, I've never heard of him since. I don't know if he's still there even, but interesting enough place. So here's the idea. It's real simple. You take something normal, ordinary, like fajitas, here's the picture, and you make it into something extraordinary that people remember. And this was long enough ago that I did not have an iPhone at the time. I just had a flip phone. And, you know, those were in the days when you didn't really take pictures with your camera because the photo quality was so horrible. But I had to take a photo. And so here's sort of the litmus test. Is there anything interesting or good enough about your business that people would not necessarily want to take a picture of, because not all businesses are picture appropriate. You know, they don't lend themselves to taking a picture of it, but something that people would rave about, talk about, and get other people excited about and interested about, you know, and this is where your whole referral starts to take off. So we want to use Jose as our inspiration to say, okay, what can we do in our business? And I want you to understand something here, very clear cut. There's been thousands of people that have created fajita restaurants over the years, and nobody thought of this. Nobody, because everybody looked at their fajitas and they said, well, fajitas are like this. This is how you do fajitas. This is the way fajitas work. And they created fajitas. And there's nothing, quote unquote, wrong with normal fajitas, but at the same time, there's nothing particularly interesting. And if you're running a restaurant, don't you want people to talk? Don't you want people to come back? Don't you want people to be astounded? Don't you want people to say, wow? I'm going to give you another quote here. This is also from Wexner, the Victoria's Secret guy. Wexner directed his chief marketing officer, Ed Razek, and the staff of the catalog operation to evaluate quality, taste, and sophistication of the brand's marketing material. So they didn't want them to look trashy. He also directed the store team to improve store design and visual presentation to create more wow. He's talking about how they transformed Victoria's Secret from an underwear store to a lingerie sensation, okay? And so let's talk about this. Pimp My Ride. You take an old clunker, you pimp it out, paint, leather, gadgets, wheels, whatever. Take something normal, that's the car, and in your business, take something normal, usual, and put an unusual twist on it. People are going to notice it, they're going to gravitate towards it. So here's some ideas. You can make stuff bigger, more colorful, fancier, more beautiful, more glamorous, okay, whatever the case is. Here's an example that I cited before, the Big Bertha Callaway Golf Club. Interesting story. Eli Callaway spent some time in Japan after having started his golf company. In 1982, they were doing $364,000. It was a blip of a nothing company. I think if he was on Shark Tank, they probably would have laughed at him because he didn't have enough sales. But he went to Japan and he saw an oversized driver. Had never seen anything like it before. So he went back home and he got his engineers on it and said, hey, you know, let's figure out how to create this thing. And they introduced it in 1989. They did 10 million, 22 million, and then 91 is when Big Bertha came along, okay? So there are 9 years into business when Big Bertha came along. In 1991, they went to 54 million. 1998, 849 million. And the book that I took this data out of was from about 2003, so I apologize that it's 10 years or more out of date. But you get the idea. It doesn't really matter what the sales are now because the idea is that the innovation worked. Now, here's the cool story that goes along with this. When they created this, now remember the time frame. It was 1990, I'm sure, is when it was developed. It was introduced in 1991. And Eli Callaway was a World War II guy. He was of that era. So this is going back 25 years ago almost now. So whenever he was coming up with his golf club. Anyway, they were sitting around in a meeting trying to figure out what do we call this big, huge freaking golf club. And Eli Callaway said, I want to call it the Big Bertha. And everyone kind of looked at him and said, Big Bertha, what is that? Does it sound like the most ridiculous? You know, it sounds like somebody's evil, large, unsavory aunt, you know, Big Bertha. And he said, well, Big Bertha was the name of it was the nickname of the bomber that they had flown in World War II. They called it the Big Bertha, and it would drop the huge payloads of bombs. I don't know exactly which plane it was, maybe a B-52, maybe something else, but whatever. They called it the Big Bertha because it delivers a big load. And everyone looked at him and said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, the Big Bertha. Nobody's going to buy a golf club called the Big Bertha. And he said, you know what, I don't know if people are going to like it or not like it or think it's funny or think it's stupid or think it's the most idiotic thing they've ever heard. He said, but I promise you this, they'll remember its name. And Big Bertha it was. And you know what, this is an interesting little side point. Let's come up with some interesting names for our stuff. I referenced in the article a window washing company, and we talked about how we can make everything they do pink. One of the things, as I was interviewing that window washing company that was so interesting is I said, well, what's unique and different about your business? And he said, well, we have a different technique for washing windows. I said, well, what do you mean a different technique? I didn't know there was techniques for washing windows. So you just put the soap on there and then squeegee it off? He goes, yeah, you squeegee it off. But he says, we use a technique. It's called the super swirl. I go, what do you mean it's called the super swirl? He said, well, it's a different technique for covering the glass without leaving any smudges, and it works better. Most guys come up and they go straight up and down, and it leaves streaks, and it's just not as good. He says, we use one where you do like a big S, and then we come around. I don't know how he does it, but he was explaining it to me. And I said, the super swirl. I said, who calls it the super swirl? Where'd you come up with that name? He says, well, it's just what we call it. When we train guys, we tell them to do this. We call it the super swirl. I said, so it's just an internal lingo. You just internally call it the super swirl. He goes, yeah, I guess so. I said, man, we need to bring that lingo out, and we need to show the customers. We need to brand this. We need to point at that shower head, to use my Holiday Inn Express story. I won't tell it again for confirmation bias, but you understand the point, right? We've got to point at stuff and let people see how cool it is. So we call this the super swirl. We call this the Big Bertha, okay? Victoria's Secret, it's a very similar story to Eli Callaway. In the early 80s, it was a small company. In the mid-1980s, they decided, hey, let's do this different. Let's take underwear out of the department store, and let's put it into this, first of all, into the catalogs, but into stores that were merchandised well. Let's put it on these beautiful models so that people aspire to something bigger, better, more glamorous, whatever the case is. By the early 90s, they're doing $1 billion a year. 95, $1.9 billion. By 2007, they were doing $3.7 billion. The #1 women's underwear company in the world by a long shot. Passed over all the companies like Maidenform and all this stuff. But this is an interesting product. I'm going to give you a couple stats on this. Let me give you a couple stats. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Sorry about that. Oh, gosh, where is it? Okay, here it is. In 1995, Victoria's Secret did no advertising except promotional items attached to catalog and in-store signs. So here's what you don't know. They took a lot of, they did the catalog thing, they did the Victoria's Secret model thing, and that took them into the billions. But then to get into the 4 billion and to double the next competitor, they took the retail market over. And they started really focusing on not just looking beautiful, but creating products that were truly innovative in and of themselves. Okay, so it's not just that they were merchandised well, but the products were actually worked well. Here's what they were able to do. They were able to take their margins from the mid-30s, so mid-30%, and the average bra at the time sold for $14.98. Now the average sale is over $30, and margins are in the mid-40s. They took the price up, they took the margin up by creating a better ride, okay? Here's another example is Nike. If you go back again, you start seeing a lot of these innovations took off in the 80s. That's when we started seeing, like we just gave the example of Eli Callaway and Victoria's Secret. These are things that took off in the 80s and certainly in the 90s. Athletic footwear was the same thing. I mean, there's a joke by the comedian Jim Gaffigan. I don't know if you've paid any attention to that guy. He's kind of funny. He says he gets intimidated now by how specialized all the shoes are. He says he walks into the shoe store and he doesn't really know what the shoes do. He just likes the way they look. And he says, oh, I'd like that one. And the guy looks at him and says, that one's for pole vaulting. And he's like, oh, well, geez, I don't want a pole vaulting shoe. But they become so specialized in the colors and the styles. And in the footwear industry, it really started with Michael Jordan. Because if you look down at the bottom, there's a picture of Dr. J. Okay, now Dr. J is holding that pair of shoes. This is the 1983 world champion Dr. J Philadelphia 76ers. And look at the shoes that he's holding in his hand. These were what I think would be considered at the time pretty advanced shoes. But look at them. They're plain white. They've got the red logo on them. And they're just normal shoes. Then Michael Jordan came along. And I remember I was in high school at the time when these Jordans came out, the ones that you see on the upper left on your screen there. And these things, I'm telling you, man, they created a freaking sensation. Nobody had ever seen a shoe that had this many different colors and this kind of a pattern, and the shoelaces were a different color, and they were red, and they were white, and they were black, and it was just the coolest thing ever. And it just took off to the point where now Michael Jordan hasn't played basketball professionally in over 15 years, and he's the highest paid athlete on the planet. He still makes over $90 million a year from Nike. And yeah, he was a great basketball player, but it wasn't just that he was a great basketball player. Dr. J was a great basketball player, and we could easily argue that Michael Jordan was better than Dr. J. But in his day, Dr. J was very, very popular. But the difference is there was not that flair in that style. See, Michael Jordan was a great basketball player, and he had a good shoe. I'm sure from a functionality standpoint, it was fantastic. But it starts to make a little bit of a statement. This is Pimp My Ride, okay? Apple Computer, the other obvious example, and the first real breakthrough product being this iMac. Looking good, looking good. Remember this thing? It came out in 5 different colors, tangerine and green and blue and aquamarine and I think strawberry or something like that. Then they came out with these desktop computers. They just look so cool, and the thin computer before there was anything called an Ultrabook. And, of course, the iPhone was the first phone that was a touch screen, and it's just remained cool. Even after, we're in 2007 and we're in 2014. It's going on 7 years, and it's still, hands down, the coolest phone. And, everybody speculates what's the next one. So here's the idea. It's called Pimp My Ride. Take something ordinary, usual, mundane, and make it extraordinary. And it's easy to look at these examples and say, well, those are all products. It's underwear, or it's shoes, or it's a computer, and it's a golf club. But what can I do for my business? And the answer is, look at the things that are visible and tangible, and let's come up with ways to make them different, bigger, brighter, bolder, have better names. You can name your processes, okay? Smaller companies. I live here in the Dallas area, and I drive every year from Dallas to Boise, Idaho, every 4th of July. Coming up here in just about a month, we'll be taking off, a little bit more than a month. And we drive through Amarillo, and we start seeing these big billboards for the free 72-ounce steak, free 72-ounce steak, free 72-ounce steak. Well, I'm telling you, when you start having a free 72-ounce steak, this is something that people notice. Now, there's a picture there of the free 72-ounce steak. The catch, of course, is that you have to eat it in an hour. And it's not just a steak. It's also baked potato and bread and a certain amount of drink and all this other junk that goes with it. I mean, you have to be an absolute ox to eat that. But it allows people to notice it. It's taking something normal, a steak, and making it bigger. I can't imagine having a restaurant that did not have a signature dish. I can't imagine it. It makes no sense to me at all to not have a signature dish that has something that is abnormally unusual about it. I ate with my family last night at Red Robin. It's a casual dining restaurant. They have a lot of burgers and things. And I couldn't tell you what their signature thing was. I don't know what it is. I like the restaurant. I go there from time to time, but I don't really know what their signature item is. They have a blue ribbon burger, but that's not a big deal. They have a tavern burger. I don't know. Let's have something a little more signature. So look for something that's big, oversized, unique design. Unique design. Let's say that you are a design build company. Maybe you could take, well, I'll give you an example. I went to an art show with my wife about a month ago. Now, before you get any ideas, I'm not a big art connoisseur, but they have this thing every year here in the town I live in called Southlake called Art in the Square, which is down at the town square, and they have all these artists. I think it's a traveling show. They come through our neck of the woods. So we're just going looking through it. And there's this one particular company that sells these huge, I don't even know what they're called. They're art decorations for your yard, and they're sort of like windmills, but they almost look like something you'd see out of a Dr. Seuss book. They're colorful, and they spin in anywhere from 3 to 15 different directions all at the same time. It's just really kind of a cool thing. They've got little ones, they've got huge ones that are you know, the size of a 10-foot tall tree, and you know, they immediately attract your attention. So that's kind of cool, but that's what he does. But here's what really stood out to me that was kind of interesting. Just a stupid little thing, but here's what was interesting. These were expensive. The larger ones especially are in the $3,000 to $10,000 range. And the guy's price tags were made out of metal, and they were laser, not etched, they were laser cut. And those those price tags in and of themselves were really cool. I remember thinking, wow, that's the coolest price tag I've ever seen. Could you get a metal cut business card, high-end design build? What could you do to allow people to see that there was something interesting and unusual and different, something that would make people's attention come to you as a design build company? Maybe it could be as simple as your business card, or something that you leave with them when you go into the meeting. Okay, so think about it. Unique designs, unusual eye-catching colors, fancy decorations, something that's fun. There's a whole other innovation starter called Fun Guy, which is a play on the word of fungus, but it has to do with being a fun guy and doing things that are fun. What could you do in that department? Okay, just think about it for a while. Make the ordinary extraordinary. Make the unusual, make the usual unusual. Make the boring interesting. Okay, so let's transition a little bit into a home of the blank. Home of the blank is pretty simple. What can you do? What can you do that allow your business to stand out from the crowd? Now, this is getting a little bit into an identity discussion. A singular thing that will make people stand up and take notice, something that people remember after they pay, something people will tell their friends about, something people will make an effort to come back for. Okay, and then what we want to do is we can brand our company or our store or our situation home of the blank. Now, blank is whatever it is that you do. Okay, these are probably things that you already do that you could point to. Can you find a blank using the innovation formulas? Could you pimp your ride? Okay, you don't have to say home of. You just have to have something really cool to point at and look at. Naming is critical. You have to have a cool name for your thing. So the example that I use when I'm talking about identity is I use the story of the Holiday Inn Express. And I love that story because I think it's a lot more similar to your business, especially knowing that there's a lot of remodelers on the call today. Because here's what you've got. You've got a hotel. And it's not like a manufactured product, like a bra or a golf club or a pair of shoes or, you know, whatever. It's a hotel, and they've got lots of different elements of the hotel. And if you sat there and you broke down, okay, let's do a breakdown of what are the different elements of a hotel. Well, you've got the lobby area, and you've got the restaurants, you've got how clean it is, how friendly the people are, you've got how big it is, what kind of facilities it has. Then you've got some amenity issues in terms of, you know, does it have big TVs? Are there lots of channels? Is there a channel guide on the TV? Are there movies included? What about the bed? Bed's an important part of a hotel. What are the sheets like? What is the comforter like? How soft is the bed? Is it an adjustable bed? What kind of pillow selection do they have? And you've got the bathroom and all the things that go along with that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I want you to see that in this hotel example, there are multiple areas of that industry, any one of which can be focused on, while simultaneously any multiple number of those can be done well, but not necessarily be chosen as the thing that they want to point at. And in the case of Holiday Inn Express, they chose specifically to point at the bathroom, and then within the bathroom experience, they chose to point at the shower head as the thing that they really wanted to do well. Now, here's what you need to understand. They also were clean and had good beds and good TVs and had a swimming pool and, you know, all these other elements. But what they wanted to focus on. Now, step aside from the story for just a minute. What I'm urging you to do is look at your business and say, okay, we do all these different things. There's all these different components of our product or our service. But what could we focus on that we could really enhance, really name or make different or make cooler, and then point at it and become the home of the whatever it is. Home of the blank. Okay, and Holiday Inn Express becoming the home of the Stay Smart shower head. Now, you won't see them run a commercial that says, hey, we're the home of the Stay Smart shower head. However, you will see that they focus heavily on that in their marketing, okay? So, examples from other innovation calls that I've done. And I've talked about Liquid Insanity. Now, I don't know what that is. I've never actually seen Liquid Insanity, but I came up with it as a name because I just thought it was a cool name. If I owned a deli and you serve sandwiches, you've got the same sandwiches as everybody else, and you've got your own little version of them, and you think that they're better than everybody else's, that's good. I would probably come up with a signature sandwich, but I would also come up with the signature drink, and I would call it Liquid Insanity, because Liquid Insanity is wildly entertaining as a name of a drink. It could mean anything. And it kind of almost sounds like it might be alcoholic, so you could have, Liquid Insanity Virgin, or if you serve alcohol, or if you don't, then you wouldn't have to make that distinction. If it's a deli, you probably don't, but you get the idea. Liquid Insanity, what's in that? And the answer is, I don't know, but I guarantee you this. If I sat down on the internet for about 10 minutes and tried to concoct a drink that would be worthy of the name Liquid Insanity, I could probably do it. And I'm not that smart with stuff like that, and probably either are you, but it doesn't matter. It's called use a little ingenuity. This is called innovation, okay? Next, Window Company, home of the 5-minute quote. And this is the Dan Walt story. I've told this a few times before, where Dan Walt has the 5-minute window company, and it's all about getting a quote in 5 minutes. His slogan is relax, window quotes in 5 minutes. And it works. Not only does it works like crazy. So just think about that for a minute. Home of the 5-minute quote, the quoting process. Dentist, home of the fun wait. Everyone hates waiting at the dentist, but not waiting at this dentist because he's got a golf simulator and, whatever kind of entertainment. Dentist, home of no waiting. So you don't have to wait at all. You just immediately go in and start getting your teeth worked on. Everybody loves that. Haircut, home of being treated like a king. Home of the king haircut. Well, what would happen if you were being treated like a king? Well, how about a throne for starters? Get a big old throne, and the person cutting the hair has to climb up on some steps and cut your hair. I don't know. They don't want to put a crown on your head. That might be a little bit weird. Maybe they have somebody that feeds you grapes or has a big fan. I don't really know how that would work. But here's the idea, being treated like a king. And this goes along with our discussion earlier of premium products. Now, I'm going to introduce a book to you here. We take a little commercial, and I'd like for you to look this book up and perhaps buy it and perhaps read it. But I just found some old stuff stuck in this book. It's a book called Trading Up. Trading Up, and it's written by Michael J. Silverstein and Neil Fiske or Fiske. I don't know how you pronounce it, F-I-S-K-E. I'm going to go with Fiske. Neil Fiske and Michael J. Silverstein. It's called Trading Up. Now, this is a really interesting book, and I would highly recommend that you read this book if you are in the business or you would like to be in the business of selling premium, caliber, quality kinds of products. Because here's what this guy does. These two guys, they build a really powerful case that in today's economy, people will spend more money for premium experiences within certain categories. So what they'll do is they'll basically save up money and they'll treat themselves to different things. And he calls it trading up. So they'll trade up from lower priced stuff to higher priced stuff, but only in certain categories and only in certain situations. And he goes through lots of different case studies, and this is where several of these case studies from this webinar come from. And I'll give you just a couple of examples reading through the table of contents. I won't go into detail. He talks about food choices, talks about appliance choices, how people are spending extra money for premium appliances, talks about eating out, and Panera and the Cheesecake Factory and Trader Joe's, and how these three places are where people go to treat themselves. Talks about wine and a brand called Kendall Jackson, Victoria's Secret, which we've already talked about. Talks about beer and the micro brewery phenomenon, Callaway Golf Clubs, American American Girl doll stores. And then he tells a story about Cadillac and how they sort of ran out of mojo. But it's a good book. The concept is very intriguing. And like I said, if you are in the space of selling premium products, or if you would like to be in the space of selling premium products, it gives you a good glimpse into the psychology of consumers as it relates to their willingness to spend extra money on certain kinds of things, okay? Cabinets, home of cabinets anytime, even 3 a.m. This is for, boy, this goes back 20 years in my career, 19 years probably, to one of the first clients we worked with, a cabinet company that sold to home builders. And I won't go into the details of that story other than to say, to overcome the problem that the builders had with cabinet makers, we recommended that they make cabinets available anytime, because timing was a huge problem with home builders getting homes built on time, and cabinets being one of the last things that gets installed. Home of cabinets anytime, even 3 a.m. Home of indestructible cabinets. Restaurant, home of the 72-ounce steak or it's free. Home of the Wicked Angel fajitas, which I showed you earlier. Home of always free appetizers. Home of free. If there was a restaurant that was the home of the always free appetizers, how would that work? Would that be something that people would pay attention to? Think about it. How much does a buffalo wing cost a restaurant to serve? And the answer is not very much money. Not very much money. You could serve 6 of them to a party of 2, and they always got it for free. They're still going to order their entrees, but now we get them to come in because they feel like they're going to get something free. It'd be kind of fun. You could also sell bundles if you were at a restaurant where you sell 2 appetizers, and when they order, say, hey, normally our desserts are $5 each, but if you order it now before dinner, we'll sell it to you for 3, because people always run out of room for dessert, right? So let's get more desserts going out the door. I don't know. It's just things I think of. Home of the free molten lava cake. Home of the famous Hooters girls. Home of the 15 minutes or free lunch. Home of the 555 unbelievable sauces. Home of 109-ounce Coca-Cola. Home of the Texas Giant burger. Home of the rainbow bread and cinnamon butter. You know what rainbow bread is? It's where they put food coloring in the bread and it comes out all multicolored. It's pretty cool. You can do that. So these are just some ideas for a restaurant, but why not you? Oh, make things big. Look at this. There's the Texas Giant donut, the big steak, big. It looks more like an iced latte, I guess, but it's big. It's a trash can full of coffee, the big burger. Okay. Plumber, drive an unusual vehicle. Bring a huge gold wrench, golden plunger in a special case. Wear booties when entering the home. Okay. What about the no crack guarantee? If I was a plumber, I'd have a no crack guarantee. I'm just kind of funny that way. Maybe somebody else wouldn't want to do that. Vehicles. This is one of my favorite vehicles. You may have seen this online. Looks like the plumber sitting on a toilet. You can't miss it when the guy's driving by. Sweet and sassy with the party girls on the go. Pink limousine. Okay. Clothing store. Very cool box to wrap clothes in. Very cool bag to carry the clothes out in. Interesting fitting rooms or interesting concepts. Interesting employee clothing. Demographic matching. Demographic matching is a term that I created when I was at an Apple store a few years ago. And I saw something that was so amazingly interesting that I took a picture of it with my phone. You know how you try to take pictures of people in public and you try to do it discreetly so they don't know you're taking a picture? Well, I did that. I don't have the picture handy right here, but here's what I saw. I saw one of these big light colored wood tables that they have in the Apple stores, if you've been there before. And there was 4 customers working with 4 employees. So there was 8 people around this large table. All 4 groups of people were independent of each other. They weren't all together. So there was 4 sets of an employee talking to a customer. And I marveled at how similar the person talking to the customer looked to the employee. Middle-aged woman talking to middle-aged woman customer. Older man with gray hair talking to older man with gray hair customer. Young hipster guy employee talking to young hipster guy customer, and so on. It was astounding. It was a 4-for-4 match They look just like their customers, okay? Home of the free tie or accessory. Dry cleaners, sporting goods, other retailers could do, you know, something. My dry cleaner that I go to is the home of the terrible smelling place, surly employees, and at least it's located right next to the grocery store. That's what they are. Man, I'd drop them in a New York second if I just thought about it for a minute. Bags. I like the gun bag. Anyway, you can just take a quick look at those. Packaging is an area where you can stand out. Okay? Bear, whatever. Get the idea. Miscellaneous industries. This is a client that we had a while ago. We branded him the Credit Jerk. And here's what his advertising said. Have you ever dealt with collection people before? We have, and here's what we know. They're a bunch of jerks. They'll harass you. They'll bother you. They'll make your life miserable. What you need is somebody to fix this problem for you, to deal with all those people, and you need somebody that's as big of a jerk as they are to deal with them, so you don't have to. Call me. I'm the Credit Jerk. I'll deal with these people. And then it went on and on. The Credit Jerk. What a great brand. Mini storage. Put a volcano out front or whatever. Doesn't have to be a volcano. Orthodontist, rewards. Rewards are great because the kids are in the rewards, right? The teenager with the braces. And boy, you know how kids are. You know, you earn eventually a free iPod or something. Auto repair, home of the whatever you do, wait. Home of the honest mechanic, I don't know. Realtor, we sell it or we buy it. This guy operates right here in my neighborhood. His name's Jim something. I can't remember his last name. And I know this guy because he sent me a ton of postcards when I listed my house one time, and then I pulled the listing off the market. And after the listing expired, I got about 80 pieces of mail from various realtors, including this guy, Jim. And he sent me 11 postcards. And on the postcard, it said, we sell your home or we buy it. And I thought, that's unbelievable. How does that work? There's got to be all kinds of fine print and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And he said, nope. Well, if we don't sell your home, we're going to buy it. Now, here's the conditions, and the conditions are very reasonable. The conditions are you've got to list it for what it's worth. We're going to get an appraisal on it. We're not going to let you put it up at a high price that's unrealistic for the market. If you don't want to do that, then we're not interested. Number two, if we buy it, we will buy it from you, and we will take the sales commission in the sale, and it's a 7% commission, okay? So you've got a $500,000 house. They're getting a 7% discount right off the top because they're paying themselves that commission. Then they can turn around and sell that house again and get a commission again. And they're only going to do it at the right prices. And they're not going to take your home on for sale if they don't feel like it can sell. And if it doesn't sell, that they will be willing to take that home. This guy lists houses like crazy around here. Home improvement, lowest payments, period. For somebody that sells based on low payments, that's a former client of ours. Daycare, home of the Mongo Pirate Playground, you know, whatever you can think of. Home of the blank. What can you do that will allow your business to stand out from the crowd? People take notice, remember it after they pay, tell their friends about, make an effort to come back for more. That's what we're talking about here. So what do you already do that you could point to? Can you find a blank using innovation formulas? Can you pimp your ride? Okay, we already talked about this. Just a couple of examples. Painting company, I talked about this in the article. Pink shirts, pink trucks, pink business cards, drop cloths, paint brushes, job signs, flyers, etc. This guy was Samurai Painting, just any other old painter. He thought he had a cute name, Samurai Painting. So no, let's make you completely pink. It doesn't have to be pink. It could be green, but pink is a more unusual color, okay? Reed Photo. This is a company that does aerial photos, primarily for golf courses. And I challenge them, when you do these shoots, give them a free 18 by 24 in every batch. Now, 18 by 24 is a pretty good size photo. I don't want to go into that in detail, but it is an interesting concept. Pimp your ride, home of the blank. If anybody has a question, I'd be happy to take it via the console and just type it in. Otherwise, we'll be done. Let's see. No questions so far. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in right now. We'll give you just a few moments to do that. We have a pretty good sized crowd on today, so there probably will be some questions. Go ahead and type it in. Well, I'm going to do the proverbial countdown because I don't have any questions coming in, so I'll give you the 5 count. 4. And if you are thinking of it, just say, wait, okay, here we go. Where do I find the 20 innovation formulas on your site? That's a good question. That is a good question. The answer is the easiest place to find them is in our methodology workbook. And I'm not sure where that is, to be honest with you, off the top of my head. But I'll tell you what, we'll find that. And Chad, I know you're on this call. We'll find that, and we'll post it along with this call online a little bit later. So I'll make sure that it's easy to find. So just go back when we post this call, this webinar, usually later on this afternoon is when it gets posted, or tomorrow morning at the latest. I'll have Chad post the innovation formulas on there as well. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it. See ya. Bye now.